if there's more than one. You know what they say, Ariel? If they have, it's a Kader de Shutfe. It's called a pot of two partners. This guy thinks he's gonna mix the pot. The other guy thinks the other guy's gonna mix the pot. No one mixes the pot, so you gotta have one man on the job, and that's it. Okay, so the Eish Hey and the Eish Yud. We said when a person is already invested into his physical form, then he's already only able to experience the Eish Hey because he's distanced, as it were, from Hashem. Just like the Srafim, anything in the world of creation, the Nivroim, they're already feeling distant, and therefore their fire is to reconnect to their godly source. The only difference is by a Yid, we are neshamas, and it's like we said yesterday. It's a nefesh elokam imal mamish. Even when we come down into this world, we're still a neshama, and the neshama comes to a state of mamashus, it like becomes physical. But it's not exactly like the rest of creation, because the neshamas are ultimately beyond creation. Even when they come into creation, they still maintain their status of beyond creation, but they add on to them this uniqueness that they're a level of beyond creation, which manifests itself as creation. It's kind of like Torah mitzvahs in general. It's something which is beyond the world and beyond expression, and that very thing expresses itself in the world. So it's something in the world which is beyond the world. So therefore, there's this weird advantage that we can have a love of a state of hergish, which means we feel ourselves, and while we're busy in that state of feeling ourselves, it's also a completely pure divine experience, which is usually, if you're feeling yourself, it's an experience of the creation. And if you're not feeling yourself, it's purely divine, it has nothing to do with creation. Here they're mixed, because the purpose God did this is that in order to truly affect the animal soul, to be able to conquer it and to be able to transform it, you have to have godliness which translates to the animal itself. And if you just had pure godliness, it would be over the head and makif to the experience of the animal. So Hashem had to contrive a way to make godliness understandable to the animal. And that's the idea, that you can feel a godly feeling, a true godly feeling, and yet there's still an I there. The only downside is that because it's mixed in with this I, it could easily veer off to the wrong direction. As you're busy getting excited with your godly feeling, if you don't keep the bittul and sort of stay connected to the point of what you're doing, then those feelings could turn into anger or lusts for physicality, which means like because you've already generated a feeling of love, and that feeling of love is centered on the self, so it could fall into the klippas very easily, and you have to guard for that. That's called keeping your bittul inside of your hislavus, your enrapture. Okay, so that's where we left off yesterday. We'll start today right after the parentheses, page Tzadik Dalid, about 8 lines up from the bottom. After the parentheses, it says ach. You see that? Ach. Ach hine yesoda eish elokish benefesh hu b'mida b'gavul. It says, however, the element of fire, the godly fire that's in the soul, is limited. When it comes down below, so when it comes down below, at least externally, all of the godly soul's midos become limited, because at the end of the day, it has to fit into a body, it has to fit into a kli. And he says only bechitzoniyusan. In other words, they don't actually essentially limit your godly being, but in an external way, they are limited. You still have that eish hey sort of permeating you, but in a revealed and external way, it's all limited powers. Imayos the be'etzim muhusan hen bli mida kamida sa'olam. Even though essentially your godly powers are without the measurements of worldly measuring, because at the end of the day they are godliness, and godliness really has no limitation. And therefore, since they are essentially godly, they are able to strengthen themselves and renew themselves at any minute from their source and from their root, and to sort of broaden and expand themselves. In other words, that even if they come into a limited place, they're ultimately connected with the Eish Yud, and they can always draw on infinite power, which is why essentially they will always win against the Nefesh Bahamis should you put the effort in. Because the Nefesh Bahamis is strictly limited. Whereas your godly soul, it only appears limited, but at the end of the day, it can always draw on this supernatural source, and it can just continue to rise up stronger and stronger until it wins, whatever the battle may be. But externally, yes, it is limited. When we slavish benafsho hachayunis, and it does get invested into your natural soul, your enlivening soul of your body, in a way where it comes down and clothes itself and even unites with the flesh. Therefore, when you're going to use your soul for physical things like anger or all types of passions, and you're going to put it into jealousy and hatred and the like. In other words, it's at the end of the day, all the energy in your body, it's godly, but it can be, as we said a moment ago, veering off into the wrong side. So you're basically leaking your godly powers into the hands of the enemy. It's like you're paying off the Palestinians. You know what I'm saying? Like you're using your resources against yourself. So what happens is your godly soul, when it comes to your body, it's limited, and now you're doling out those limited resources into the wrong side. You're reducing the strength of your godly soul. And guess what? It's really going to mess you up. You're not going to be able to get excited and passionate about God so long as you're distributing your resources to the other place. Even though at an essential level your godly soul has no limitations, but that's on an essential level. In an external level, it does have limitations, and therefore you can misuse your resources. And as long as you're getting angry and getting jealous, and your thought process is taking you into places like that, it's like you couldn't do worse for yourself, because you're shooting yourself in the foot. You can't really simultaneously find a place of wholesomeness and connectedness. And that's what it means, that your animal soul is strong. It automatically creates a weakness in your godly soul. Because you've diminished your element of fire in your godly soul. So this is what we're saying in the very beginning of this whole last couple of days of classes. We said Esav and Yaakov were in the womb, and like one was stronger than the other, and the prophecy they got from Shem and Aver was that there's going to be two nations in your womb, and one will always dominate over the other. They're not going to be simultaneously in a state of domination, because there's only a certain amount of resources, and they're either going to be doled out to Esav, God forbid, or they're going to be doled out to Yaakov. So as long as you're letting it slip, your godly powers into the wrong direction, it's going to automatically weaken your godly soul. And therefore, going back to the whole principle, I hope we didn't forget where we are in the Maimer. Gorin ma nefesh bahamis. Remember, Gorim mosifim v'dorshin. There's a principle we said you have to, like we said regarding the way the pasuk works. Yikach midam hapar. Let's just review that for a second. It says he takes from the blood of the animal. And then they say you take the mem off the word midam, from the blood, and you put it on the par. So you read it now. That's called gorin umosifin. So yikach dam mipar instead of midam hapar. So now it reads you take blood from the animal, which means it can't have fallen on the floor first. It has to come straight from the animal. The idea is just it's a principle in Torah. You can take from one, add to the other, and you come up with something new. And we're applying this to Avodas Hashem. Since you've let your resources leak over to the negative side, therefore, gorin, you have to reduce from the nefesh bahamis. How do you do it? By having like a strong stance of will. Just say no. You have to close your eyes. Don't allow yourself to see evil. In other words, it's just a pure act of willpower and iskafia.
Can I use wax floss?
Yeah. Just a pure act of iskafia. Just say no. But Akiva, we need you soon in here. We're missing you. In other words, you're having thoughts about a person. It's very difficult. You're having thoughts about a place, and it's driving you mad, and it's creating like all kinds of anger inside of you. understandable. You have a nefesh bahamis. You're leaking out the resource of your godly soul there. But you know what's happening? It's automatically just keeping you from serving God, which is of course what you want. So the only thing to do is just close your eyes from it. You have to just not see it. Negate that whole effort. Don't turn after your heart. Don't turn after your eyes. In other words, even if you're not going to change your eyes from wanting to see that, you're not going to change your heart from having those feelings, at least bepoel, in an act of pure hiskafia, you're not going to look at it. You already explained above in a previous mimer in the Hemshech. B'shem hashari tshuva Rav Yonah, Rabbi Yonah. We talked about Rabbi Yonah. He wrote the book on tshuva. So he explained over there, that when it comes down to it, if you just hold back your actual expression into negative traits, you wind up actually breaking them and limiting them. In other words, hiskafia ultimately does lead to a weakening of the actual desire, right? The more you feed it, the hungrier it gets. So if you stop feeding it, it actually gets less hungry. Yeah.
So, if I want to say something negative about, like, I get upset at someone,
right.
I want to explode, and if I'm holding it back, that's what you mean by that?
That's for sure step 1, 100%. Step 2 is stop thinking about it, right? And the idea is that one would say you're just repressing yourself. You know, there's like a whole psychological Freudian thing. Just got to like let it all out. But that's not really what we're saying here. In other words, by holding it back, okay, you actually take away the problem. Because the less you think about it, what's going to happen? You also have this whole other you, right? The Rabbi said about Freud. He said he's amazing. He dug very, very deep. You know, there's a joke. He found the id. The id is like the ego, or something like that. He says if he would have dug a little bit deeper, he would have found the yid. Right? So,
what language is id?
Id is like a Freudian language. I don't know. But the idea is that it's true. Like, in other words, if you're going to suppress your animal soul, it's just suppressive, and one day it's going to like just blow up and kill you. But not if you realize that you have this whole other soul that's just like waiting to come out. So if you realize that there's a yid in there, which means you're not just suppressing your animal soul, you're also allowing it to be replaced by godly expressions and by mitzvahs and Torah and holy thoughts, then you can suppress it all day long because it's healthily replaced by good thoughts and righteous thoughts. Right? So the idea is that the least you think about your anger, your jealousy, your disappointing feelings, the more room there is to actually experience a love of God. But in Chassidus class, in davening, in loving your fellow Jew, it's like because your godly soul only has limited resources in your physical body. So if you're doling them out to the other side, you cannot get excited about God. So it's going to lead you to depression and all kinds of things. It's just so the first stage is hiskafia. Stop it. And this actually will ultimately dim the actual passions for it as well. You'll be less hungry for them. And it works. I mean, it's tried and true. Hargaza means to get straight up angry with your animal soul. There's a whole chapter in Tanya explaining how you have to just like sometimes just scream at your animal soul. Call it crazy names, literally. Right? He lists a whole bunch of names over there you should call it. The idea being is that... What's that? Which chapter? I think he brings it here maybe? I don't remember which chapter. We'll get into it soon. It's like chapter 28, I don't know, over there somewhere. And the idea being is that you actually have to put your animal soul in its place. In other words, you scream at it, you get angry at it because you use the same midah. It's the idea of sort of using its own power against it. You know, you wind up in a state of anger, right? And what are you supposed to do with that? It's like you've crossed onto the other side. So the only thing you do is utilize that anger or that depression to be angry and depressed at your own animal soul. Because it's really like it's not a healthy feeling, anger, ever. It's not a healthy feeling, depression, ever. It's like sort of on the dark side. But the one usage you can have is to become bitter over your lack of service to Hashem. That's like the saving grace.
How do you redirect that energy?
It's just a simple matter of kavanah, right?
Like when you're involved in it, when I'm angry about something, it's really hard to...
Right, so it's like when a person is like in the process of like bowing down to Avodah Zarah, basically, you can, if you have like a moment of clarity, you're just like, what am I doing? And you stop. It's the same thing. It's very possible. You ever been on a diet? In other words, you sometimes a person can be on a diet and he's used to eating whatever he wants, and he reminds himself he's on a diet today. It's like it's like this morning. It's a fast day, right? So everyone goes to the bathroom, they brush their teeth, they have a cup of tea, right? So you have the same passion, desire, you want to brush your teeth and have a cup of tea, but you hold yourself back. In the midst of your regular routine and your morning routine, which you do every day and you're so accustomed to it, you are a human being after all. Which means you have like the ability to take hold of your thought process. Obviously if you're just all wrapped up to it and you're just like lost, then that's a very low state of being. You need help. That you need help from above, basically, if you're just completely lost in your passions, and it can get there's something called a Rasha V'Tovlo. Rasha V'Tovlo means he's a Rasha, he's a little bit of good in him, but it could be that good only pops up every very once in a very long while, God forbid, which means you have like very few like remorse thoughts, and penitent thoughts, Chas v'Shalom, that you need a lot of work. But a normal person, especially a yeshiva bacher, he should be in a healthy enough state where when he realizes he's having thoughts of anger, he can stop himself and be like, these are thoughts of anger, and by the way, while I'm angry at these thoughts. Right, that's the point. It's like you turn that moment into a positive.
But a person can. How do you differentiate between if it's a depression or bitterness?
So the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 26, 27, 28, he says like if you're having these thoughts during the time of your divine service, when you're davening, you're learning, they don't belong there. So it's a trick of the Yetzer Hara. You're supposed to Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. If you're having these thoughts while you're in your workplace, they don't belong there. Who told you that in the middle of work that you're supposed to be thinking about that? You have a job to do. So if you're having these thoughts, they're just coming upon you, and you're entertaining them, but like by accident, memela, it's automatically the wrong time. The only time these thoughts have any real place is when you conscientiously set aside a time to think about them on purpose. So any other time, they're thoughts of depression, they're thoughts of the Yetzer Hara. So basically, you're never supposed to have these thoughts, is what he's saying. It's like a beautiful thing. And the Alter Rebbe is like, it's kind of like this anti-Freudian thing. He's like, suppress. The only thing is, he's like, if you want to think about him, tikkun chatzos, or like once a week, or before you go to bed at night, you can have a moment where you like conscientiously conjure up these thoughts of what's wrong with you, But once you really have to do that on purpose, you don't want to do it so much, And then you realize, it's a very beautiful tool that he puts in our hands. Basically, anytime these thoughts are just happening to you, you can right away know they're not l'shem shamayim. And once you know they're not l'shem shamayim, you can push them away with two hands.
Is that allowing them to dissipate, or is that bottling them up?
Well, no, that's what he's saying here. Is that if it was just a goy, lahavdil, then it could be just bottling them up. It's like they're going to find a way to come out. Even to a yid, he's saying, find them a way to come out. Like, conscientiously think about them at Kriya Shema Lamita, once a week or once a month. So let them, but for a yid, it's also completely different, because as you bottle them up, what you're really doing is you're taking your it's video what's going on in the UN right now. You're taking your resources out of the evil. It's not called bottling it up and suppressing. Now you have $250 million to spend on something good. So you're busy with something else. You're not bottling them up. You're busy davening with kavana. You're busy, loving your fellow Jew, running to do miftzoyim. Like you have more energy. Because it Bamash takes a lot of energy to expend on feelings of jealousy, disappointment, sadness. Trust me, I know from experience, I'm sure all of you do as well. It's like Bamash draining. You go to sleep and now you're tired from what? You didn't even do anything all day, but just think bad thoughts, right? So it's not, bottle those things up. Bottle them right up. You don't want those thoughts, right? And again, if you feel like at certain points, it could be healthy to let them out, but conscientiously, on your terms, at your times, and otherwise, you have now spared those resources for good things. And trust me, you're going to have like a fulfilled good life now. You're not going to feel bottled up. You're going to feel expressed, because you're only bottling up your animal soul. Now you're expressing your godly soul. There's two of you, remember. That's the difference. We're like crazy, right? Okay, don't forget that. Anyway, so Yargiz Adam Yetzer Tov al Yetzer Hara. You have to get, at those moments, anger, your godly soul should get angry at your Yetzer Hara. Which means there is such a thing as hard gevuros of your soul, can also be found on the side of Kedusha. It's like there's intense gevuros. It could be bad, it could be good, with kas and anger. Even Moshe got angry sometimes, but it was for God. Shezeu mitzad tayruvas hanefesh bahamis, yafoch al hara shebo. Right? You have to turn it over onto its own self. Shergiz v'yiktsof al zeh shumeruchak. You have to get angry on this very fact that you're distanced from God. You are far away. That's where you should turn these harsh gevuras to. Let me just repeat that. He really says that the truly harsh gevuras are not really of the Yetzer Tov implicitly. The harsh gevuras really belong to like Esav, the sword. But when they come out, then it's like the godly soul just realized it has like a new weapon. It normally would never have come to such a state of anger. It really came from the mixture of the animal soul in there, because it has these harsh gevuras. But once it's already there, now the godly soul Taka does have a new weapon, and it can be used for God. That's what we said. That's all that is called the gorin. You subtract from the negative forces. Then add. You add powers to the godly soul. When the animal soul is very strong, then there doesn't have the power in the godly soul to inflame his heart and to overcome the animal soul. But by removing the element of fire, which is natural, and how do you do it? By putting your foot down and having a strong act of will and anger against your own flaws. You right away add the power to the element of Eish of the Nefesh Elokis. As the pasuk says, when this one falls, which is the animal soul, it automatically rises up the godly soul. Its strength becomes greater. It's just simple as that. It's like the secret to success. A person's like always looking for a diet. A person's always looking to get stronger, make their muscles bigger. He wants the perfect. You don't even realize that when it comes to Elokus, the secret to success is just holding back your taivas. The second you hold back your taivas, it's unbelievable. You automatically will feel like a burst of godly inspiration. Just like that. It's amazing. I remember I got into this bad habit. Person goes to the bathroom before, they go out to the world. So I have my phone in there. So I check the news. I was doing this for a few days. And I was like, this is not how I want to start my day. It's usher, in fact. I gotta the first thing I see should be Osius HaTorah. I don't want to look at any news before. So I stopped. And immediately, my davening was better. It's amazing. It's just that simple. There's things that you're doing that you know you shouldn't be doing. The second you stop doing them, you will feel a boost. It's like a person who goes on a diet. They just feel good about themselves the next day. It happens every time.
Does it mean that the Gairin's taking away, let's say your bad anger, pushing it away? Does my sifin come automatically? Or you have to now take that bad and be moisifit to good and actively think.
You have to do good deeds, but in other words, you're doing them anyway. Really,
saying is the moisifin happening memela? I mean, it's kind of
it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen memela.
Obviously, you have to first to be Gairin.
Right. You have to first you have to take away, and that's not automatically increase. But I'm saying it basically does, because you're gonna, especially if you're a person who's has a whole day set up of Torah and mitzvahs and davening and Chassidishkeit. You're already doing avoda. The point is, you're going to have now more active excitement in your avoda than you would have if you had not goring.
Because it kind of sounded like two things. One is my sifin it's going to come in Mela, okay, you're doing good already. The other one's you have to now channel this energy. You have to actively.
You do have to channel it, but how do you channel it? By doing just simply the avoda that you're already doing. But the point is, you're going to have more resources at your disposal when you do your avoda. So in that sense, it is a shtickle mamela. Again, it's not mamela if you don't decide to get up and do avoda. But I'm saying, as Yeshiva Bachrim, you're anyway going to come and do avoda every day. So the point is, your avoda is now going to be supercharged because you have more energy, you have less leaking of your powers.
So it doesn't necessarily mean now take this energy and be moisfit to good.
I think it does. I'm
saying specifically to this anger.
Oh, take the anger and use that anger for good?
Yeah, I'm saying if Gairin, take away the anger, be Maisiv, taking this anger now, using it for good. Is that the Gairin and the Maisivin? Being Maisiv this anger now to good? Or it has nothing to do with that, even without Maisiv it's good?
No, well, he brings up this idea of adding and Mosifim only after he finishes the topic of using the anger of your Nefesh Bahamas against itself. Right? So that all that is the level of of Gori. Sometimes it takes an anger to actually pull yourself away, right? So that's part of the Gori. And now you have this extra energy. Okay. We left off Od Zos. Shagam ma shegaram nefesh bahamis yizvasev ala nefesh lokis. That this that you took away from the animal soul will be added to the godly soul. In other words, it's called transformation. In other words, that you now can use your very animal passions for God. This element of natural fire of the animal soul, the taivos, kol taiva, lisavos kol taiva, that you want everything in sight, everything that takes it to the eyes, you just want to eat it up. Which means its basic pure power of desire. In other words, you will now transform it from the darkness of this world to desire to cling to God. So the one thing that the animal soul actually brings to the table that the godly soul does not is, as we say, rov tevuas b'koach shor. You can get more grain with the power of an ox than if you're going to go and try and hoe your own field. Like the animal's strong and he is intense. So your animal soul has this crazy desire that your godly soul in fact does not have. And therefore, the idea is that if you can actually pull away the klippa aspect of the desires, like I said to you guys before, the Maimer in Torah, in Likutei Torah, what's that?
The bull and the China show.
Yeah, but there's the Maimer which speaks about the four elements of fire, water, air, and earth that are inside of the bull. When you burn the bull and it comes ashes, this is the idea of the red heifer, right? The which purifies the dead, like the ultimate power of kedusha, basically. What is it made from? It's made not by taking away the animal entirely, but by burning down all of its sort of false expansion. That taking the fire and the water and the earth out, and you're left with just the ashes, which is the domain, right? And the afar element. That afar element is just the pure desire of the animal. When the desire fluffs out into water, then it's desires for physical taivas. When it fluffs out into fire, it's desires for arrogance, etc. When you burn out all the other elements and just get down to the base element of afar, it's not evil. It's like klippas noga. And what is it? It's just a pure animalistic drive. That animalistic drive can now be turned towards kedusha, and you can have an animalistic drive for God, which is greater than a godly drive for God, because your animal is stronger than your man. So the idea is when you go in and you pull away all the negative behaviors, you're left with just a pure animal, and that's like your best friend. That's called hizhabcha. You can take that and transform it into kedusha, and it gives your godly soul a tool it never had before. By cooling down your physical pleasures. First, you have to do it by like pure might. You just have to force yourself not to do what you want to do. Bargaza, and to anger yourself, as we said earlier, to just sort of get up in your own face and call yourself names and look at your lowliness. And then once you sort of get out of Mitzrayim, right? This is called Yetzias Mitzrayim. They have to run out of Mitzrayim because there's no like sort of clear thinking when it comes to you sitting in front of your taiva. You're not going to, like, if you're into alcohol, you can't put a bottle on the table and say, you know what, let me think this over. No, you're gonna fall into the bottle. So the first thing you need to do is run away from the taiva. But once you sort of have kafiyah, you can then start using tam vadas. You can start using rational ideas and thinking about it and use intellect. And that's the idea of the difference between Yetzias Mitzrayim and Sfiras HaOmer. They had to run out of Mitzrayim, but once they got out, they could start systematically counting sphera after sphera and working on it with a biur rationally, of each and every aspect of ourselves. So there's two levels. First is kafiyah b'koach, like forcing yourself against it, and then slowly with a avoda of rational hisbonus and meditation, thinking about God, and you know. Umuas bara. So first it has to be a disgust with evil, with ra gamor, Rahman al-Litzlan, real pure evil. Hamiyusu b'koach har-gaza, and that comes with the power of just angering yourself, like saying, I'm a gross person. Look how coarse I've become. But taivas heter, hu idea avoda. But when it comes to taivas heter, in other words, when it comes to taivas iser, that you're crossing the line, mamish, against the Shulchan Aruch, then you have to just get this anger kafiyah. But when you're out of that really gross area and you're just dealing with you're eating too much, chocolate cake, then that's already taivas heter. It's permissible taivas. Then you do that with avoda of tam v'das. In other words, that you can sort of think yourself through, right? Just because the chocolate cake is sitting in front of you, it's not just a crazy desire. You're going to stick your face in the cake. You can think twice. You can overcome yourself. And as we said earlier, the whole mimer that we learned, that you can meditate that Hashem has put before you life and death, good and evil, which means in every object there's the life and the good of that object, which is basically the or panimi and the or makif of divinity, which is enlivening it. And there's the death and the evil of that, which is the klippa of klippas noga, which makes it looks like a separate entity, and furthermore the taiva in it, which makes you want to sin. So you can sit there and calculate and say, like, let me look at this thing again and realize what I'm actually looking at. Is it a divine, piece of God, or is it really a piece of chocolate cake? So when you start to do this work, hiskafia, both in the sense of pure overcoming, and then in the sense of hisbonenus, you then take the natural fire over onto the side of godliness. It becomes the natural fire becomes included into the godly soul, and that's what it means mosifin, right? So it's not mamela, right? You have to actually do the avoda. Actually, I take it back. Really, he does sort of seem like. Well, I guess the idea is that your act of hiskafia then leads to your act of sort of hisbonenus. It's kind of is like two sides of the same coin, because he says this is what it means mosifin, that as you restrict yourself from the object, you're adding to your nefesh elokis. That energy is right away transformed. With that energy, yeah, okay. That energy is right away transformed. Because the energy that you saved, you still have the raw desire of the animal soul, but you saved all this leaking, and now it could be used for God. Through this act of holding back the animal soul, it shines an additional measure of light. That you get an advantage of light which specifically comes from the darkness. In other words, you would never have had that animalistic drive for God had you not gone and gotten it from the dark side. So there's an advantage in the side of light that came from the darkness. Okay, so now going back to the whole principle here. Does anyone have any questions? I kind of went a little bit fast there, but questions, concerns, comments? Okay.
How is, when we burn down the bull to its base matter, how is that pure animalistic drive? It's upper. It's the least driven of, I would say, of all the...
No, but it's just like the pure gashmias, in other words. Pure taiva of an animal, if it's going to be left to its own devices, it's going to be a bull in a china shop. But if it's strapped onto a yoke, it's going to be very productive for the society. So in other words, the idea is that you don't kill the animal and bury the ashes. The idea is you take in general, the four elements, the offer is the klippas noga, and the other three is the gimel klippas temimei. Right? So you take away the evil part of it, the totally evil part of it, and you're left with just the pure chayas of gashmias, which again it has a certain intrinsic taiva. The animal is stronger than the man, but you could use for good.
Laziness and all these things.
So as to your point, in other words, obviously the dead ashes are less chayasdik than the live animal, but it's a metaphor for taking away the other elements and bring just down the base element. Yeah, what'd you say?
Offer is not necessarily bad.
Offer is klippus noga. It's like it's called koach hamisabeh.
Laziness and all these things.
No, it can. It can also, if you're already sort of going in the wrong direction and you're fueling your basic klippus noga, you're already sort of fueling it with negative energy. So offer also has its own unique level of negative energy. But if you pull the ra gamor out of it, right? It's that afar, it's that basic koach of misava, which could now be used for good. It doesn't have to be used for good.
Wait, it's koach misava.
Koach misava.
Isn't that mine?
What's that?
Mine.
No, that's koach misava, like tainugim. Koach misava means just pure desire. You could have a desire for anger. You could have a desire for pleasures. You could have a desire for frivolity, jokingness, right? But you could also just have pure desire, like just the strength of the animal before it actually goes into a certain direction and applies its strength.
That's offer.
That's called offer. Now it could be that if the animal, to your point, if the animal is just in a state of taivas in general, so even its afar is its own unique klippa, gimel klippas atameis, which means it's going to sit there and do nothing all day, right? But I'm saying if you pull away all the evil taivas from it, it now is just a regular old animal, like from Sheishis Bereshis. It's not yet corrupted its flesh. So it is stronger than the man, and it could be ridden on to drive the man to glory.
It's like the frustration, when I feel frustration at myself for like doing things that are wrong, whatever, like being weak. Frustration at that weakness, then it turns into anger and it turns into motivation to change.
Right.
And to overcome it. And that's like the fire that burns away the dark side, and then it all becomes light.
Yeah, as he said, it's like a fire which consumes another fire. Like the fire of motivation will consume the negative fire. But again, beware, only let that happen at your discretion. If you find yourself just like thinking these thoughts in the middle of trying to do something else, it's not healthy. And it's coming from the Yetzer Hara trying to bring you down. Okay. V'zeh inyan ha-nesira. Going back to the real thing. This is what it means. The Nasira, in other words, the separation of Adam and Chava. We talked about this whole idea of the Nasira for a long, long time. And we said actually what ultimately is the Nasira, the metaphor for the Nasira in Torah, because everything has to have a Shoresh in Torah, he said. So the Shoresh in Torah of the Nasira was Gori Mosifim V'Dorshi. He said this is like the pasuk in Torah which describes the Nasira. The Nasira is the removal of the good from the bad. Let me just go back, because it's been a long time since we hit on this topic. The Nasira was the idea of God's. We said the metaphor for it was a teacher contracts himself into a mushel, right? And he holds back the majority of the information of what he knows from the student, and he just puts himself on par with the student by bringing a mushel. Instead of talking about the Ori and Sof and all kinds of spheros, he starts talking about fire and water, something that the student can understand. In the meantime, he's basically made himself in a back-to-back relationship with the student. His back, because he's only revealing the very lowest aspect of himself. All right, and the student's back, because the student is really only dealing with the lowest aspect of the teacher. In other words, he's not. Ultimately, the student has an ability to gain the full gamut of what the teacher knows. So at this point, he's only able to get the very least from the teacher. And the idea is that at this level, this is a metaphor for what? For Hashem taking his energy, and because he wants to create a world, and the world is like the metaphor, it's something that the student can understand. If Hashem didn't contract his energy into small kalim and vessels, we would never have been able to come into existence. He would have blown us out of the water for too much light. So he contracts himself and puts himself into a little box, and God makes himself look finite. And so therefore we think and have come up with this misconstrued idea that we're like on a par with God. Because we understand, because the student understands the mashal just as much as the teacher understands the mashal, because the mashal is just a mashal. A child and the teacher both understand what fire and water is the same. So all of a sudden this student comes to the realization that all his teacher really knows is fire and water, the same as he knows. He thinks he's on a par with God, basically. And that winds up being a mixture of good and evil. Because now the student doesn't realize that there's anything really godly. He thinks that all God really is worldliness, because God is hiding his true supernatural self, which is beyond the world. Let me just stop right there. Does everyone understand what I just said, more or less? Or should we go back and go over that?
The teacher doesn't explain that that's a muscle?
What, go back over it?
No, I just...
You understood? The teacher understands that it's a muscle.
Doesn't explain that this is just...
No, at this point he does, exactly. At this point he doesn't explain, because as is natural, when you're busy with the muscle, you're not explaining the nimshal yet, right? In other words, it's very important that there has to be a clear just muscle before you start confusing the student with the nimshal. You start bringing the nimshal, the kid's going to lose it right away. So he's just muscle. So this Hashem is basically contraction into worldliness, and meanwhile, the world which was a product of that thinks that that's all that God is, because God has not yet shown his child the nimshal, that he's really beyond all this. When was the first time that he actually showed us this? Matan Torah, said the Rebbe. You know, and what's the mechanism of doing this is that he like injects a whole bunch more light, right? The student thinks he's like sort of toe to toe with the teacher, and the teacher all of a sudden says, "Oh, by the way, it means this," and he like shows him the nimshal, and the student is like all of a sudden plunged into realizing how distant and far away he is from the actual teacher, and that's called the separation right there. So Matan Torah was called the Nasira, the separation of God from man, in order so they could turn around and have a true relationship, a face-to-face, that the student could actually start to perceive the true level of God, not just his contracted level. So all this is called the Nasira, and in Torah, the mechanism which explains the Nasira is this idea of Gori, Mosif, and Vadorshi. How do you create the Nasira? By pulling away from your Yetzer Hara, adding to your Nefesh Elokis, and then becoming, and Dorshin is like now you have a face-to-face relationship. Because pull this all into your own world. Why are you falling into the trap of your Yetzer Hara? It's because godliness, your godly soul has contracted itself and put itself inside of your Yetzer Hara for a good reason. As we said before, the shell has to precede the fruit. Because if it doesn't, remember this conversation?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, the fruit would never be able to be encased by a shell. If you had just fruit, the shell would never be able to wrap itself around it. So the klippa comes first. That's the idea of the muscle comes first. Hashem needed to limit the power of the godly soul at first in order to allow it to become put in a physical place. But now there's this horrible mixture where the animal soul thinks that it's just on par with the godly soul. It can tell it what it wants to do. It doesn't see any mila in the godly soul. So now comes the separation, which is you put your foot down and you pull the energy of the animal soul away from it, and you pull it back towards the godly soul. You make the godly soul realize the animal soul realize who's in charge, right? In other words, it's like the nimshal comes up, right? And so there becomes a separation and a feeling of total distance that the animal soul recognizes that it is not the same as the godly soul, and therefore will become subservient to it. You follow? You got it? Okay. This is the Nasira, which we will get to tomorrow, it looks like. Shkoyach.